Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Hey guys, just wanted to cut a quick intro for this interview. This is with Nick Aldis, the national treasure. He is the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance World Champion. The man is at the top of his game. He's brought back this brand, one of the oldest wrestling brands on earth. Him and Billy Corgan teamed up. They brought it back. They delivered a pretty unique show called NWA Power, for anybody who doesn't know. It's a classic wrestling show. It's a studio show. It has a lot of the feel of, if you've ever seen the old Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes promo videos, it's great like that. I know a lot of people probably know who Nick is. We talk a lot about AEW. Thunder Rosa, the NWA Women's Champion, is going to be representing the NWA there. We talk about it on September 15th. You can find on FITE TV. They've got some matches going out for the first time since the pandemic started. And I think that's going to be great for them. I think it's going to be a great product. NWA Power is a fantastic product. And obviously, you can follow Nick at Real Nick Aldis and follow the NWA at NWA on all social media. Follow me at Chris from BKLYN if you like this. I hope everybody enjoys this interview. I had a great time talking to Nick. He's an interesting guy. You're going to notice in the interview, at first he's a little apprehensive. He's like, what the fuck is all this? Then we get into it, and I win him over by the end. I always do that. All these people are a little weird on these Zoom interviews, and then I get them at the end. They decide that they like me, that I'm not a piece of garbage. So check that out. Enjoy the interview. Enjoy the show. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. YouTube, let's go, baby. All right, let's get into it. All right, guys, I am here with Nick Aldis, the real world's champion, Nick Aldis. How's it going, Nick? Thank you for doing the show. I very much appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of NWA Power. I'm a huge fan of your run with the championship. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I don't dress like this normally just around the house, but I've been shooting some stuff for FITE TV today, so you caught me on a good day. You're lucky.
I'll be honest. I thought about throwing on a sport coat because you're always so well dressed, and I saw you in like a sleeveless shirt, and I was like, he'll probably be casual about this.
Trust me, I've been down at the pool earlier, so I mean, if we'd have scheduled it for earlier today, you would have seen the complete other end of the spectrum. But I just got done talking to Carlos Molina ahead of a boxing pay-per-view for FITE TV, so that was cool.
Oh, that's great. I want to talk to you. Actually, I want to talk. NWA Power is one of the most unique shows, is one of the most unique wrestling shows I've seen in a long time. And it's a weird thing because I became a fan as soon as I watched the first episode. But weirdly enough, when I saw the set, I was like, I think they're going too old school. I don't know what to expect, but I'm still going into it optimistically. I'm just curious on your end. You go into the TV studio, which is a weird place to do wrestling if you've never done it, and you see it. What were your first thoughts of the set and just of what the show was going to be? Because you came out, you cut that opening promo, which is, I rewatched it last night. Honestly, one of the best promos in wrestling in the last few years. I'm just curious what your initial thoughts were and how you approached that first episode personally.
Well, first off, thanks. I think that, I have to admit, when it was first sort of described to me that we were going to do studio wrestling, I was a little bit apprehensive because, that phrase can mean a lot of different things. We've seen studio wrestling that works, and then there's a lot of studio wrestling that just kind of looks a bit bush league and a bit JoJo and not really sort of high enough quality for the current, for the modern era. But man, when once we, and obviously I've been quite hands-on with the whole thing, but once we got to see the facilities, and GPB, such a world-class studio, and we got in there and the set design and everything, it was, I couldn't wait. The thing is, when you think back on the really iconic sort of promos, in wrestling, a lot of them were stickman interviews. They were interviews in a studio. They weren't people in a ring with a microphone. That's not really a natural environment for a sort of for a promo. when you think of all the classic Flair promos, you know what I mean? Kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing. And then you think of like Hard Times by Dusty and all these different sort of promos. They were all in the studio. They were stickman. They were straight down the lens because there's a directness to it and a real sort of intimacy to it. That it's, if you're The Rock and you have that presence and that ability to command like a huge arena full of people when you're standing in the ring with a microphone with catchphrases and stuff like that, that's one thing. But that's a certain style of promo, but interviews, I think, are a different thing. And we wanted to sort of go back to selling a match, right? Like putting butts in seats, like telling people why they want to come and see something or why they should be interested in it, rather than just sort of these kind of long soliloquies, kind of about an ongoing storyline kind of under the, I feel like I see a lot of promos now where I just sort of think, what are they trying to sell? What's the purpose of this? It's a lot of it's very sort of exposition-y, and it's just sort of, there's just this kind of assumption that everyone's going to watch the next episode and everyone's going to watch the pay-per-view and everyone's going to watch like the thing that they're talking about. So there's no real urgency to like making people, want to see the outcome. And we assembled a group of talent, with the interview set style promos in mind. That's why we put it as one of the big factors in the people we chose for the show, was who can do it that way, who has the ability to walk out and have an audience, feet away from them and a stick man. So they're going to ask them questions and they don't know what questions are going to come. They don't know how it's necessarily going to be phrased. It's not necessarily a completely sort of preconceived thing. It's organic, and it's a little bit rough around the edges, and you've got to have that. You've got to be quick. You've got to have that wit. And I think that interviews bring out that realism, and they bring out that sort of spontaneity that I think is missing in a lot of wrestling.
Yeah, I think it's great watching people pivot on the fly when they get a reaction from the crowd. And I just want to say something about you guys' crowd is like when I tuned in to the first one, I saw that guy in the Santa hat in the first row. And I was like, it reminded me of the guy with the straw hat from the old ECW episodes. And I was like, okay, They've got the straw hat guy. They're going to be good to go now. Right.
No, and that, one of the reasons why we haven't done any power, during the pandemic is because we just said, there's just no way. It just doesn't feel that it's just not going to be the same without the audience, because the audience is just such a vital part of the show. They're not, I know that's like a cliche thing that a lot of people say, oh, the audience are part of the show. They're the star of the show. That's the sort of thing that, that you'd hear on a WWE like puff piece, the audience are the biggest star. But like for our show, they genuinely are, because we genuinely react to what they're saying, and they're sort of, they end up becoming part of the dialogue, and it just didn't feel right without them. And and look, we were really pleased with how that culture sort of cultivated itself and policed itself. There's no sort of hijacking. The fans weren't trying to sort of steer the direction of the show in their own, to fit their narrative or anything.
They got the question mark over.
Yeah, they just decided that they were going to be with stuff, and they were going to sort of, they were going to be enthusiastic rather than sort of, rather than disruptive. And that was it ended up becoming such a cool part of the show. And I mean, I can say, I know for a fact, like there were a few in the early days, the first season, like there were a few times where there were a few fans who were trying to sort of do some of the typical kind of hijacking stuff. And like the rest of the audience just shut them down and were just like, no, we don't do that here. Like, this is the NWA, and that's, we love that about our audience.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic thing. It's a great show. I actually, this is something I've been curious about, and I haven't heard you talk too much about it. So you left you were back and forth to TNA before you came and started doing the NWA stuff. I'm just kind of curious, as a guy you must have had options this is a brand that it's the brand. And I talked to Dan Severn a few years ago, and he talked about how proud he was to hold the belt, and you seem to do the same thing. I'm just curious, like, how much that weighed into your decision to go with Billy to do this, what his pitch to you was, and why you thought it would work.
I mean, certainly I did believe in the prestige of the championship, and I did believe in the legacy. And I felt like, I think a lot of it was timing. I felt like with where everything had gone, and we had seen this, we'd seen this big, at the time, Ring of Honor was, really essentially the number 2 promotion. New Japan had really established themselves in the US, and had sort of carved out a niche for themselves. Like, obviously there were like the Bullet Club guys, and there were a few others who had sort of established themselves to the point where they were bleeding into the lexicon of the entire wrestling business. You would see Bullet Club shirts on, in the audience at Monday Night Raw, and and it was sort of becoming hard to avoid. And amidst all that, we realized that the landscape was shifting, and the audience was sort of hungry for an alternative. But also, we recognized that there was a lot of, even though there was a lot of different brands and a lot of different personalities, a lot of the wrestling was very similar. And it was all, and WWE were adopting it too. It was all becoming this very sort of fast-paced, very spot-heavy, very sort of very much focused on the execution of moves rather than the storytelling, and rather than the sort of making it meaningful, or the sort of the emotional element of it. It was very much about, like, can you top this? How much? How much? It was really more of a sort of quantity over quality type of thing when it came to in-ring action. And we just, it's not a knock on anyone or anyone doing that stuff, but we just saw a gap in the market, and we saw that there was that personally wasn't the type of stuff that attracted me to get into the business. And I thought to myself, well, if that's how I feel, I can't be the only one. And so when I talked to Billy, he just he sort of laid out what he saw for the wrestling business. And I laid out what I saw for the presentation of wrestling. I said that, there's just a lot of people just kind of getting a ring and getting a bunch of wrestlers and just booking dream matches, with no real, like, oh, wouldn't it be great to see this person wrestle this person? Well, yeah, it would, but it would be even better if there was a reason, and it wasn't. It was just very much like, oh, dream match, like, oh, epic match, one really good high flyer guy gets another really good high flyer guy, and it was, okay, so, like, what's the story to be told here, and so we just saw, it just felt like there was a lot of the stuff being left on the table. And for me, I really wanted to delve into stuff that felt more like a prize fight. I really wanted to focus on really building to one big important moment, rather than just kind of loads of cool matches for the sake of cool matches. I wanted to do stuff that meant something. And so I felt like with everything, and just looking at just culture in general, we seeing a lot of the resurgence of a lot of kind of retro brands like Champion and Converse and stuff like that. And there was a part of me that thought, I think there's been enough time has passed, and with the WWE network, a lot of fans were now being, were having exposed to the classic NWA of the late 80s. And they were, and I think a lot of people were starting to go, man, that was some high quality athletic stuff. And then the Flair 30 for 30 happened, and that really emphasized, I felt like that Rory did such a good job making that show, making that piece, but where they, and Cornette even says on that show, the WWF was the Harlem Globetrotters and the NWA was the Boston Celtics. It was like, that was where you went to see, like, the real high quality athleticism. And it was really about the atmosphere, right? We wanted to create this thing of, like, this is going to be a contest. This is going to be two guys who want to prove one is the best, and that's what we wanted to do. And so just it all sort of fell into place, and I felt like that was a good fit for me.
Oh, yeah, I think you guys did a fantastic job. I mean, it's a shame it didn't happen, but the build to the Marty Scurll Crockett Cup match, I mean, hopefully, is there any chance we will be seeing some live wrestling from you guys anytime soon?
Yeah, September 15th. We've worked out a deal with United Wrestling Network and Thunder Studios in Long Beach, California. So we'll be taking part in a series called Primetime Live. It'll be going out on traditional pay-per-view on cable and satellite, but also on FITE. And you know, it's a manageable way for us to be able to sort of promote some matches that we think people will want to see. I think you'll see as you know, to start with, obviously we'll just have to kind of get our feet under us a little bit and just start, you know, just put on some matches that we think people will enjoy. But over time, I think you'll start to see we'll build to certain matches the same way we did with the 10 Pounds of Gold series, and we'll sort of earmark certain events that, like, okay, this one's going to be where you're going to see this guy versus this guy. This one's where you're going to see this title match, and we'll start kind of building to them more in the way that we had previously with those really sort of long form, you know, pieces and talking heads and you know, for like training footage and things like that. But we're going to make a start. Like I said, September 15th is when we kick off at Thunder Studios. It's a really cool facility, you know, and obviously partnering with UWN, it gives us access to a lot of guys out there on the West Coast, a lot of hungry talent looking to sort of make a name for himself. So there's some fresh matchups and some interesting stuff coming up. And, you know, there'll be more content coming out, you know, as we move forward. But, you know, we've got to be judicious, right? Because we're a smaller company. We've got to make sure that when we do something, we make it count, and that there's a path to profit for it, because we're not getting a rights fee. We've got to, you know, that's why these shows are going to be on pay-per-view, but at a lower price point, so that we don't expect everyone to buy every single one. But if you're a big fan of Thunder Rosa, you know, then maybe you say, okay, in 3 weeks, I'm going to get that one because Thunder Rosa is wrestling whoever, you know. Or if you want to see a world title match, you know, okay, in a few weeks, like, you know, Aldis is defending the title against this guy. Oh, the tag titles are going to be on the line on this one, you know, and things like that. So it's a way for, you know, and it's an opportunity for some talent to step up and show something, because if, you know, they're going to get to be the focal point of a pay-per-view or, you know, of a special event, and they can step up and show the world why they should be.
You mentioned Thunder Rosa. She just announced she's going to be at All In for AEW. She's going to have a match with their women's champion. I saw that, and I'm sure you're a little tired of talking about it, but does it get us any closer to maybe the rubber match between you and Cody over there in AEW?
That's a conversation that's never gone away. Look, he knows where I am. They know where I am. You know, we can make it happen if they make the price right. And I think that ultimately, you know, it's a fan-driven business. If, you know, and clearly the demand is there because it gets brought up every time I do one of these. So I'm not too worried about it. You know, when the time is right, we'll make that happen, I think. But there's also a lot of other fresh matchups there that people, you know, people have been bringing up to me. Really, since even before All In, people were saying, oh, what about, you know, Aldis and Omega, or Aldis and Hangman, Aldis and Jericho, you know, Aldis and Moxley now is another one that comes up a lot. And look, like I said, we've always had the prize fight approach to pro wrestling. We're not concerned and bound by contractual barriers, you know, promotional barriers. Like, ultimately, we'll make it happen. We'll come to the table and we'll get it down on paper, and we'll make the match happen for the fans if that's what they want.
Okay, I mean, you mentioned that Aldis Hangman match. That is such a classic. That would feel like a very classic NWA matchup. The cowboy, you got the British, the dignified suits versus the cowboy. That's a fantastic match. But I was more even curious just about. So she's over there representing the NWA women's title. That's got to help you guys. I mean, do you think that elevates the NWA brand in the right way? Because now people see that, and they can, you know, there's a lot of casual people that maybe they're tuning in for the NBA on TNT, and they see this and they go, maybe I'll check that out on YouTube. That's an easy thing to get into.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Look, anytime that somebody like Tony wants to, decides to come along and make that commitment, and an incredible commitment to put, such a huge amount of money into the industry, and with, I presume the idea is to try to attract more eyeballs to it. Then obviously, when he's willing to, anytime someone's willing to give up some of their TV time and dedicate it to someone that represents our organization, then yeah, of course, that's a huge thing. And I think it's a testament to the work that we've done. It's a testament to the work that Rosa has done. It's no secret at this point that Tony had approached me about joining AEW, and I had, at the time, thanked him for his interest, but I was sort of loyal to the NWA. But I also made it clear at that time that we were very open to, it doesn't mean that we can't do something, so I think this is, it's exciting news for a lot of fans, and we're happy about that. It's not a big surprise to me, because I think that we've sort of known from the beginning that that we thought this could happen. And it doesn't have to stop at AEW. I mean, look, we pioneered this by our working relationship with Ring of Honor, which is still very much a thing. And it doesn't have to stop there. If WWE want to come to the table, then we're open to that. If New Japan or AAA, Conan is a good friend of mine, and Conan's, said multiple times, he's even said it on social media, that he wants me to come down to AAA when they're open back up for fans. So ultimately, my job as the world champion is to promote this brand and this championship as the lineal heavyweight championship of the world, the real world's championship. That's why I call it that, because it really was the championship that spawned all others. So I take that seriously. I've proven that with, defending the title in, 7 different countries, 4 different continents, multiple promotions, multiple opponents. So that doesn't change. And Rosa is going to step up and carry the mantle for the NWA, all out.
That's great. There's something I want to ask you about. I want to ask you about Tim Storm, because he's kind of like the heart and soul of the show. To anybody who's listening who doesn't know Tim Storm, it's an interesting thing. Besides the fact that he looks like Powdered Toast Man from Ren and Stimpy, he is just he's just such a human guy. It's just a quick, but like, I'm just kind of curious if you guys were always planning on working with him, because I remember seeing an article years before even Billy bought the brand, and it was kind of this weird thing where it was about Tim, and it was kind of about the fall of the NWA title. And I just remember reading the article, and then I saw his work in Championship Wrestling of Hollywood with you, and I saw the build to it, and he's just one of the fantastic characters in wrestling. And I'm just wondering if you guys always wanted to bring him in, or if the idea was just to pass the torch, and then you just saw that it was money and just kept it going.
It's probably closer to the latter, but it was somewhere in the middle. So I think the intention at first was that they were just going to strip all the champions and start again. Obviously, I was on board, so I think there was always a sort of, I'm sure that there was always an assumption that at some point or other I would end up in the title picture. But it was just one of those things where when you meet Tim, you just can't help but like the guy, and you can't help but be drawn in by his personality. He's very genuine, and he's very authentic, and he represents really everything that we wanted the brand to represent, right? He's a man's man. He's athletic. He takes it seriously. He takes himself seriously, presents himself well. And he really genuinely had a true love and passion, has a true love and passion for the NWA and for being the NWA world champion. So when we saw all that, we saw a tremendous opportunity. I know for me, the wrestler in me and the promoter and the booker in me saw that and went, man, that's what a great protagonist for my antagonist, because I know I'm an antagonist. And so you have to have that self-awareness, right? So once you know who you are, that's when you can really start to make this business work. Because you have to know what people think of you kind of on a human level. You have to know, you have to understand basic human psychology, right? Instead of trying to force. That's why overly contrived scripted stuff, it doesn't really resonate, because people make a snap decision on someone in seconds, whether they want to or not. It's just human nature. They just decide within seconds about, okay, this guy is this. It takes time for those opinions to shift and change. But I know that when people first see me, they're kind of like, oh, this guy thinks a lot of himself, or he's uppity, or he's got a British accent, or he must think he's better than me, blah, blah, blah. Oh, he's tall, he's got a good body, blah, blah, blah. They meet Tim, and it's like, you just, within seconds, you're thinking, man, what a great guy. What a man, man's man. He's the sort of guy that you trust your kids with, with your kids, and he's got that aura about him. So it was a natural matchup. So then we had fun with that. And then I think that we caught everybody off guard, because we didn't do the typical thing of like, okay, well, let's find another opponent for Aldis who's like a similar level of exposure, similar level of sort of buzz and interest online, yada, yada, yada. No, we'll do it with this. And so we know that nobody's seen this. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it's kind of like, it was the organic, because it's very easy to get swept up in the sort of instant gratification culture of, oh, look how many likes this got, look how many retweets it's got, but does it really mean anything? When you look back at the early days of the NWA, under our administration, and you look at like the 10 Pounds of Gold series, like we didn't get that many views, but for some reason it still gets brought up. Mm-hmm. So the people who did see it really resonated with them, and we got a lot of media requests, and suddenly it was a genuine word of mouth, a genuine organic thing happened where people started going, have you seen this new NWA thing? It's really cool and interesting and different. It wasn't everyone tweeting about it. Well, they were, oh my God, it was trending and yada, yada. It was genuinely resonating with people on a human level. And that's really what we've intended to do from day one.
Okay. Yeah. Tim, when you said he seems like a man, he seems like the kind of guy who shakes your hand firmly, but he knows exactly how hard not to squeeze to make you feel like an asshole. You know what I mean? He's that kind of guy. And
he really is that guy.
I wanted to ask you, actually, this is just this is a question just for me. I've worked with Homicide before, and I'm just always curious what other people's opinion, because he is, for a guy that size, is disturbingly intimidating.
I love D.
He's great.
I've known Homicide for a long time, and yeah, no, you're right. Like you meet that guy, and he's another guy. He's 100% legitimate. Like there's nothing there is nothing contrived about the Homicide character.
No,
like that is D, but he loves the business, and he really understands the business and has tremendous knowledge. But he also, he's not judgmental. He has a real wide kind of expanse of appreciation for the genre. So it's like, he's not just, he does it, you a lot of the time you would see a guy like that and you would expect that he only likes a certain type of wrestling and certain, but he's not, he's a student of the game, man. And he's, if you talk to Eddie Kingston and, a lot of other guys that Dee's had a big hand in helping, like they'd tell you the same thing. But no, I love that guy. And I'm glad that he's part of the NWA team behind the scenes.
Oh yeah. He's fantastic. He's a very professional guy. I'm just always very curious what people's first impressions of a guy like that, because he is.
Oh, I'm sure most people are scared shitless when they first see him.
Yeah, when I met him, I was ring announcing a show, and I got his intro a little wrong, and I was just like, oh no, this guy's gonna kick the shit out of me.
Yeah.
A couple other things I wanted to ask you about as we're getting ready to go. I know you guys got the new programs coming out. This is just a weird question, because I heard you talking to James Storm. I watched your What's Causing All This, which is your show on NWA's YouTube channel. Good show. But you had mentioned this thing of when they take the title off of you, now you're in this position of where do you go?
Right.
And I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts would be, because at some point, I mean, all runs end. So sure. What's your next step? Do you stay here? What do you do? because I mean, obviously you guys wrote that into Tim's character where he can't challenge you again for the championship. So you kind of given him an out, like where's your next step when obviously this ends? Well,
I mean, that would come once whenever somebody presented themselves who we decided and we knew was the right guy, then it would just be a case of, it's too hard to answer that without having all the other pieces in place. Right. Mm-hmm. But I would say, if for example, I was injured or something and I had to, had to move on now, I would probably take a back seat for a while and probably just work behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But not, and not because I don't, not because my ego wouldn't allow me to sort of do anything else, but unless there was like it would either be that, or I would have to move into some sort of rivalry or feud that was, a real personal sort of blood feud type situation where the title wasn't necessarily important, wasn't necessary for that particular type of angle. But ultimately it's like I don't think any of us, we didn't plan that I would, have the title for a, super long run. It's all fluid. It's all organic. It's all based on what's kind of obvious from the audience. And what's obvious at this point from the audience is that they see me as the guy representing the brand. So until we got to a point where we felt like it would be in good hands somewhere else, I think that would be the thing. But ultimately, it's not up to me, But I could say, I would probably say that I would probably enjoy taking a little time away, just so I could not from wrestling, but just from that responsibility, so I could focus on a lot of the other things, a lot of the other hats that I wear. And sort of dedicate myself to that fully without sort of any conflict of interest, because we do try to keep some separation of church and state.
Okay, I understand. I know you got to go, so I'm just gonna ask you one or two quick questions. This is something I like to ask anybody who's like gotten to a certain level of achievement, and who's dedicated there. Because you started wrestling when you were 21, right?
No, I started wrestling when I was 17. So I signed with TNA when I was 21.
Oh, okay. That was the disconnect. So the question I had for you is, so you started 17. At what point early on did you go, yeah, I'm a professional wrestler, that's what I do? And then how quickly were you smacked right back down to be like, oh, right, I still got to work at this?
Oh, well, certainly when I first came to TNA, because I went full time as a wrestler at 18. Mm-hmm. I mean, I started with the Knights, but then because I had a good look and picked up the basics quickly enough, I went full time with All-Star Wrestling for Brian Dixon, and at that point in time, you could wrestle 5 or 6 days a week for most of the year. Mm-hmm. So I was a full-time wrestler. That was what I did that was my job. I remember when I went to the Harley race camp when I was 20, like everyone was standing around sort of talking about what they did for a shoot job. I work at a gas station, or I'm an electrician, or I'm this or that. And I'm like, well, I'm a wrestler. Like, that's my job. And they're like, what do you mean it's a job? Well, how often do you wrestle? I was like, well, I work for All-Star Wrestling. So, and I pulled out my schedule, and I just said, well, here's my schedule when I go back. And it was just like, 20 dates, in 1 month. And they were just like, what? I can't believe it. But that was the scene in the UK at the time, because Brian had all those dates. And I knew it wasn't like in my mind, I thought, oh yeah, like I know what I'm doing now. I made it. I just knew that I was lucky, to be wrestling that much and getting those reps. But it was a very specific style. So when I came, and then obviously I was able to get the break with Gladiators, and then it was kind of like from that I'm like, oh, well, now I'm on television. Now I'm a television star of a totally different thing. and I did some other stuff. I did some stage, and I did, you know, and then I got the call to go to TNA. So it kind of just went like boom, 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 you know, leapfrogging one to the next. But then, you know, I got thrown in at the deep end at TNA and didn't have a lot of support as far as people sort of going, hey, here's how to do this. Like it was, they didn't really know that I had no experience whatsoever of that sort of style, like the very fast paced, very sort of spot heavy style, but especially not very short TV matches. I had zero experience of that. We would go out
20 minutes.
Yeah, we would go out and do like, if you did under 15 minutes for Brian, he'd be annoyed at you. Because he wanted you to work the crowd and get them going and, you know, and take your time, because that was what his shows were all about. They were all house shows. It wasn't television. So the idea of trying to do a match in 4 minutes, I mean, I was just rushing, and, you know, I would botch everything because I was so nervous and panicking. And then like the crowd just, you know, at that point in time, the TNA crowd was pretty brutal. Like they let you know. And I mean, I got eaten alive those first couple of months. So then my confidence really took a big hit. And then it was only when I got put in the British Invasion tag team with Doug was when I started to find my confidence again, because Doug sort of went, okay, let me handle the matches, and you handle the personality stuff. And you know, and then I started to sort of slowly get used to it and get my footing.
Okay. That's actually something I'm quickly just curious about, because obviously you can't be the same person you are on TV. But I always think about when Stone Cold talks about the great wrestlers, he's always like, it's them turned up to 11. And I know you played some characters early on in the TNA run, but like how much of this right now is what you are, and how much of it is like just a little extra? Yeah,
it's a little extra. You know, especially when I'm in the Power studio, you know, that's when I'm just sort of, you know, more cocky and more full of it, and more, you know, pushing that envelope as far as sort of being outrageous in the stuff I say. But yeah, like I always think that the best promos have to have elements of reality to them. You can't. Yeah, again, that's where I think some of the stuff has a disconnect now, because if someone else has written it and it's, you know, but something that's if every single part of it is part of a fictional premise, then it's very difficult for the audience to go, "Ooh, yeah, he meant that," you know. Whereas when, you know, if you look at the thing with the build to like me and Marty, for example, a lot of that stuff was legitimate. It was just the emotions were not right. So you know, Marty did sign this big money contract. Yeah, you know, so people could believe like maybe he is a bit jealous about that, you know, and
it was a great selling point.
And then Marty's like, oh, I've never been a world champion, and, you know, Nick's got to be world champion at, you know, multiple different promotions, and maybe he is a bit jealous about that, you know. And it's like, they're real things that you know, again, that's where like wrestlers' egos can be so detrimental to them drawing money, because they don't want to, they think, oh, I'm being buried. Like if it's something legitimate, and it's like, no, dude, it's you're using that stuff to sell a fight.
Something bad has to happen to you for somebody to want something good to happen to you.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, just because you don't want to acknowledge something about yourself, you don't think that everyone's already saying it and thinking it anyway, you may as well use it and make money off it. That's the way I look at it. Like, if 9 out of 10 people watching go, oh, this guy's a pompous, arrogant prick, you know, like, I'm not going to be able to change all their minds, but no, I'm really a cool guy. Like, you know, like, I was like, okay, cool. Well, you want to see me get my ass kicked? Okay, it's on pay-per-view. You know, that's the business we're in.
And that's September 15th on FITE TV. Obviously, follow at Real Nick Aldis on Twitter, at NWA. I know you got to go, but Ash Samuels from Ring of Honor and Catalyst Wrestling made me promise that I would ask you if you actually like the Smashing Pumpkins.
I do. I do. And you know what's weird is that they especially their classic stuff, you know, it was part of my rotation in my, you know, I have very eclectic music taste. So I listen to all kinds of stuff, but yeah, it really is. And like, man, you know, Tonight and Disarm and like some of those, like, it's one of my favorite songs ever, but it's kind of weird now because I feel like I'm sort of kissing ass you know, and like even listening to it sometimes, like my wife has, you know, my wife has them all on her playlist and stuff too, in her iTunes, and it's like, even when it comes, you know, we'll be driving in the car somewhere and it'll come on, and it's like, there's this part of me that sort of feels like, oh, is it weird? Should we skip? You know, but it's like, no, like you should just enjoy it, you know. But yeah, no, I always have been a fan.
All right, well, that's great. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day. And obviously, again, September 15th, FITE TV. Go check it out. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully at some point when all of this is over, you guys I'll be able to see you wrestle live in New York or down in Atlanta, whatever. Go and look, here's the thing. For anybody who's listening to this that doesn't know Nick and doesn't know NWA, the 10 Pounds of Gold series is the only wrestling show that you have a start point. So you can start there. Anything else, you're going to be wondering about what happened before the first episode. You can't go back and watch. You're not going to watch 20 years of Monday Night Raw. If you want to get back into wrestling, if you're a lapsed fan, it's a perfect show. Start right there at the 10 Pounds of Gold and work your way through the first season of NWA Power. There's also plenty of the pop-up events on YouTube now. It's fantastic stuff. Thanks again, Nick.
It's cool. I never thought of it like that, but you're right. And that's a great way to put it. And we introduce you to one character at a time. So you can kind of really get on board and get with this one person at a time. It's no overload. And also every episode of NWA Power is all at youtube.com/NWA as well. So yeah, appreciate anyone for checking it out.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, man.
Have a good day.